I think the town's a little late.
Yeah, I think that. Good. All right. I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Voluntown Planning and Zoning Commission at 7:30. Roll call. You Scott.
Scott Davidson, Joe Rockroy,
Yeah, hi.
Jim Merrick. David Neiman.
No, you see them in alternate, or are you an alternate?
Yeah, he's.
All right, so I can see Jim. No public online, I think. We don't do that. No public comment, old business, with discussion of zoning amendments for PA 25-1. I assume we're gonna give a little presentation.
Sure. So I'll share the screen. I think we talked about this a little bit last meeting. And at the time I had sort of hoped that a proposed piece of legislation would have given towns more time with this. But so Public Act 25-1 required a couple of sets of zoning changes for every municipality in the state, not just Voluntown, not just a certain type of town. Two of the changes were that every municipality in every business or mixed use zone needed to allow what's called transit-oriented middle housing, which is defined as 2 through 9 residential units as a small multifamily, by summary review, which we interpret to be basically a site plan review, a non-discretionary commission action. So that was to be allowed, and so regulations need to be adjusted to allow for this middle housing by summary review. And the second change is parking caps for multifamily housing had to be either eliminated or adjusted to accommodate the state statute, which is that units of 16 or under could be approved without minimum off-street parking, and units developments above 16 units could have their parking restricted to 1 off-street parking spot per 1 bedroom or studio apartment and 2 parking spots per 2 or more bedrooms. So those are mandatory, they're non-discretionary. Municipalities need to make these changes. And the bill, which passed only in November, put a July 1st effective date for those. We had again strongly hoped that municipalities would be given more time of this, but that bill did not pass, so we were stuck with the July 1st effective date. It is, certainly possible that we may not finalize our plans, our regulatory changes by July 1st. That said, all that does is it basically would allow a developer who is, sort of poised and ready to go with a 2 through 9 unit multifamily development to submit to the town, and the town doesn't have regulations in place yet. So it would just be sort of what the closest applicable regulations would be for that use. In this case, Voluntown hasn't seen too many multifamily. We saw basically that 4 unit on the corner of Church Street. And, in the last decade or so, I think that's probably the only multifamily development we've seen. So I don't think it's super urgent, but we obviously need to move forward sooner than later. So we talked about this a little bit last month, and working with some of Juliet's markups and suggestions. I think there's some discussion I'd like to have about what needs to be changed. But I'm going to just go through the proposed list of initial changes, and then we can get into some of the specifics. So I think, does everyone have copies there?
Yeah, John, can I ask one question before you start?
Yeah.
And because you probably would know.
Yeah. Okay.
The multifamily or mixed use,
Or mixed use.
that is middle housing, has to occur in one building, correct?
I don't think necessarily. I think that's, it could,
Definition that a building containing,
uh,
well, the middle housing does, the mixed use does not.
right. So I think, and again, these are things that there's a lot of gray area in this, in the new statute. Some of this stuff is just going to have to be adjudicated by case law. If, some commission is going to demand a condition of approval that the developer is going to object to, and we'll see. But I don't think necessarily mixed use development needs to mean a single building. I think if we wanted it to mean a single building, we could define and regulate it that way. And if someone objected, the courts will decide.
It's more the multifamily, like, would you allow a fourplex and a fiveplex? Or
Yeah, or a
Or
cottage
flat
cluster, like a cottage cluster, for instance. Could you do, eight little freestanding cottages on a single lot, like it would, like it was a, condo court or something like that? I think the answer is probably, but that's, this is one of the things we can discuss and decide. So I'll actually, that's a good intro to the first section that we're proposing for change. And I'll put it up on the screen, but you guys can follow along. This is on the first major change is proposed for page 5, the definitions, top of the definitions. We're proposing a new definition for middle housing, which would be defined as housing developments for between 2 and 9 dwelling units. And here we say either attached or detached on a single parcel. So that's in part, I think we could probably define that away if you wanted to allow or just require a single building. Also may be referred to as transit-oriented middle housing per the provisions of Special Session Public Act 25-1 as codified and may be amended from time to time. So this just basically sets that up. And if you want to stop here and talk about whether we would like to restrict that definition, that's fine.
it's just different than the state's definition.
Yeah, and so to me, well, the state. All right, well, hold on. I can.
It says a building, but do we care? If it's one or more, I don't think we'll get any, so.
Yeah, and so it's really just a question of, do you want to consider the option of flexibility in design? If you wanted to do a little fourplex and a little threeplex, or 2 fourplexes instead of a single larger building, that might fit better into the context of Volantown.
I'm fine with them, just. What does everybody else feel? I mean, actually, it might work better in Volunteer to have the possibility of
I don't
smaller.
have that either. None of us have that. Hold on, John, none of us have what you're looking at, and we're a little hard. What?
It's basically a markup of the zoning regs themselves.
No, I know, but none of us have,
Okay.
other than Juliet, none of us have what is being proposed.
It was, okay. I think it was sent in that
So,
email that Crystal sent around last week.
You want a copy?
absolutely,
It was called-
I have a copy.
Does that work?
Yeah, I can do it.
You want a copy? Yeah. Would you like a copy?
Couple double
Would
items.
you like a copy?
Sorry, I'm.
Copy on the ring.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
Thank you.
I'm not clear on what you're.
Yeah, I.
Right.
No,
I
like following and.
Well, so what was it you were referring to, that wasn't in this. package?
Correct.
We're all for it in some respects.
Yeah,
What is it?
Do it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
double.
right.
double.
I can see what he's talking about, but I
Yeah.
can't see it in the whole context, and. that's
So
why I
what's,
forgot.
all right, I'm gonna
It wasn't in our one.
No,
I'm gonna share my screen and just show you this, which is, it's a little interesting.
John, before we go further, I'd like to ask a question. Is, and I know I've asked it before, but I'm gonna ask it again because we thought that the state was gonna push back that date. Can we set a moratorium that none of that can be put in until we get these regs done?
Interesting.
We did it for the cannabis stuff.
for-
We've done it
yeah,
for
we did
other
it for
stuff. I don't understand why we can't just do a moratorium for this stuff and set a realistic date.
it's not, these changes aren't that complicated. Huh? I mean.
No,
you
I
don't
just-
have to do it, so you're not gonna get what.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think that's an interesting question, and we can ask Rich Roberts about it, but my sense is
No.
probably yes. Because if a moratorium is to allow a municipality to get their regulations in place for a specific purpose in a discrete amount of time,
Correct.
we could, and you know, despite the fact that this law goes into effect July 1, I don't know that a municipality, I don't think there's nothing explicit that makes it exempt from a moratorium. I think it probably could be.
Well, let's go through it, because
Yeah.
the changes you've made aren't.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is, and here I stopped my share. So I'm going to bring up the language of the bill itself, in which there's a little bit of internal inconsistency to it. So this is from Public Act 25-1. I don't know if you can see this, but this is in the definition section. Scroll over. So transit community middle housing development means a residential building, which I think is Juliet's point. She remembered correctly. A residential building containing not less than 2 units, but not more than 9 such units. And then, but however, it goes on to including, but not limited to, townhouses,
Plural.
duplexes, triplexes, perfect sixes, and cottage clusters.
And what
Cottage
is
clusters,
cottage clusters? Are they connected?
no.
No.
Cottage clusters is clearly, I think cottage clusters is definitely
It needs to
envisioned as multiple, like multiple little, almost like a
Clusters
cute,
of
a cute little
cottage.
trailer,
Like
like a cute
They're
little
not
trailer
like
park.
connected by.
Right.
Exactly.
Right,
Tiny houses, like,
like a little cluster here and a cluster here.
Yeah.
But like the ones in Old Saybrook, they're like, the affordable housing, they have little, I don't know what they're called, like a breezeway or something that connects them all, so they are technically
One structure.
connected.
I think the drafting of this leaves it kind of an open question.
I agree.
Unless, wait, hold on, unless cottage clusters is defined somewhere else. Hang on. No. So I think going back to our regs, I think we have the flexibility to say one building or multiple buildings at your discretion.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that definition. And then we added mixed use development, added to mixed use development, the line at the end. A mixed use development may or may not include a middle housing development in commercial or mixed use zoning districts. And that's basically straight from the statute.
So that means that doesn't make any sense to me. So mixed use development isn't in the same building? Does
A
not
mixed-
have to
so
be in
we
the same
say
building?
we say a mixed use development is the development of a neighborhood, tract or land, building or structure with a variety. I think we don't state either way.
So you allow like North County.
And so, it could be something like, I don't know, like old Mystic Village or something like that. If you know that sort of that little shop collection, like a lot of little buildings, and there's anyway, that's
It could be
so
like a duplex on one, a duplex building and a commercial building.
right.
side by side.
Right. Or if you picture, that some of the places on the beginning of Church Street there, you've got house, barber shop, house, like
Mhm.
if you picture it something like that. So again, I think that fits in the mold of the village district, which again is really the only district in which this sort of development would be allowed by review. So, all right, I'm going to move on for now. And then we added summary review, because basically all of our regulations right now are split into 2 categories. One is basically zoning permit, which is an administrative permit that I am authorized to sign off on as CEO, or special permit, which is something that comes to the commission, has a public hearing, and is discretionary. This is a kind of a middle case, which is a non-discretionary. So I'll just read this: a non-discretionary approval process for specific middle housing developments within commercial or mixed-use districts, whereby compliance with zoning regulations is determined by the commission or their designee without public hearing special permit, special exception, or variance. Summary review may be conducted as an administrative permit or site plan permit at the commission's designation. So this basically allows you to review one as a commission, again, without a special permit and public hearing process, or you could designate it to the zoning officer as administratively. People clear on that definition?
It's like site plan, except you look,
I have a question to think about that.
Um,
Because I don't know.
hang on, John.
You know, this is something I don't have, which is from our zoning regs. Yes.
Yes.
It's just a definition so far.
And that's to be included.
Yes.
Yeah.
the red is to be added.
Middle is the statement of such that it shall be
So we're gonna
permitted
get-
without the need to obtain a special permit or.
Right, it's like a site plan review, so you can't have any discretionary review involved in
Right.
it. So the state
There's
is
no-
saying you have to allow 2 to 9 units in your commercial district
Without,
without without a public hearing, effectively, or any kind of discretionary review, so you have to have. I mean, you don't have to, but the towns should have,
a majority of your zoning.
no, but you can add in your own regulations, your own. you know,
Right, what it-
Criteria for middle housing.
Like that.
No, it is not saying that.
No.
It's saying it's by summary review. So, which is effectively site plan review. So it means review by the commission. So it has to adhere to whatever regulations you have in here. So he's gonna propose in here regulations for summary review, meaning criteria.
It's a whole reading of paper.
It's like,
You guys don't have it?
it's like site development standards. So lighting, landscaping, access, parking,
Map-
all of that applies.
Right, massing, setbacks,
whatever.
height.
Your site plan check sheet there. Those all apply, you just can't have you can't have a public hearing, you can't say, you can't deny it because of some arbitrary health and safety reason or something. Like when you have a special permit, you have more
You're
discretion.
saying it has to be discretionary, and what it's saying is shall be permitted without the need to obtain any.
So-
discretion.
So you have to have in your regulations, the criteria you want to have in there, you can put in your regs. For such a development, you're allowed to put those in, and if it complies with those regulations, you can say, yeah.
So you could require that every middle housing development plant a banana tree in the front yard. And
Right.
that's just either you have it or you don't. If they have the banana tree, you're approved. If you don't have the banana tree, you're denied. But you can set the criteria, but that needs to be objective. It needs to be non-discretionary.
And it can't be so onerous that the development couldn't happen, so you couldn't say you have to have 14, I don't know, 140 bonsai trees or something, you know what I mean, you can't,
Oh,
it's gotta be something.
Or you couldn't say you need to, build a 5-story parking structure to accommodate or something like that. Like there's unrealistic things. And the other thing is you can't say, something like landscaping shall be adequate, because adequate is a discretionary term.
Doesn't do that in your. That's all it is that.
Some
Are you
are
ready?
like-
Ready?
Get my mic right. Yeah, that's right.
so we can still use all the existing zoning regulations as objective.
Yeah.
Yet some of this stuff where they're saying you cannot park in the front, you have to have X number of trees. That stuff seems to me a little arbitrary.
You can put that kind of stuff into your regs if you really care about it, so say if you really,
To me, it was a matter of site, because depending on that site, you got wetlands in the back, you can't park in the back, you have to park in the front, or the way they've designed all the cottages,
yeah, this
parking is
is
in the
abide
back,
by that.
you know,
Yeah.
well, but it's saying you can't park in the front.
No,
So-
these are samples, those aren't ours. These aren't
When
ours.
you say sample,
That's just a
That
temp,
was
that's just
something
a,
he gave you.
This is middle housing.
No, it's not.
State regs, as I saw.
No.
that's a template. That's a template that other towns are using.
Okay,
That's a little over the top.
yeah.
Just believe it.
And so that, I didn't,
A little over the top.
because, a lot of so the point of,
Well, the same as what was asking out, but,
I know, but that's not ours. These aren't ours.
okay.
That's
So
not-
while I'm on a roll and I'm green, obviously, at what I'm looking at, my other question was, with all the information they have here about what you should and shouldn't have, there's nothing about drainage and water.
That's in your right.
Is-
we have
Okay.
separate stormwater regs.
Stormwater management.
All right, so you're looking at the town regs again.
So the town regs apply. I mean, the site development standards in your regs. would
Right.
apply.
So
Right, and so all the stuff that we have for setbacks and
Right.
building heights
I
and
don't know
stuff.
what this was.
Yeah.
This was somebody, I don't know, which town was
Anyways,
it?
my time-
That's my partner, Mike D'Amato,
Yeah,
has
I-
developed that for a bunch of different
Yeah.
towns.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to give you guys that as an example of what some other towns are doing. And frankly, a lot of other towns are, I think, more freaked out about this than Voluntown is, or Voluntown really needs to be. I think it's not going to be that big a deal in Voluntown. And so, you know, some towns are very freaked out and want to regulate the hell out of these things, so that they don't, you know, totally change the face of, you know, whatever downtown area or whatever commercial district. And so they're being extremely prescriptive about things like building design, you know, and fenestration, and, you know, the number of windows and the height of windows and the number of landscaping elements. So towns are, you know, I think in many cases overthinking it, just to be cautious and frankly to discourage, you know, the proliferation of these things by sort of raising the design bar pretty high. I don't necessarily think that Voluntown is in that same case. So this is an example of, if you guys wanted to basically regulate the hell out of them, there are examples out there, but I think we can, you know, proceed a little bit more, maybe casually, not casual, but, you know, a little less onerously, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let's go over that section 4. You're taking out the word commercial for the major development district in order to exempt it.
Yeah. So I'm not, yeah, I'm being strategic in defining things a little bit, just so there's no question that we do not consider the major development district to be commercial. That would be subject. You know, major development is really intended to be kind of a industrial, institutional type of thing.
Agree with that?
And so, you know, and especially because it's I also wanted to make it clear that this is a floating district. It's not landed. And so
Right.
we don't want someone to land this, you know, major development district somewhere and then put up a bunch of multifamily or, you know, small multifamily.
Right.
So just to be clear, and so again, and so I did the same thing with the rural district, because Juliet and I had conversations, and I involved Attorney Roberts on that in our rural district, which is again most of the town geographically, we do allow some commercial uses.
A lot.
You know, and certainly agriculturally related and home occupations and certain, you know, limited, I think maybe we allow, you know, like auto repair in some certain places. So wanted to be clear that this is meant to be a residential district, which is, you know, and which is, you know, oddly, you know, this is for residential uses, you know, the middle housing. But to be clear that, you know, we are defining these zones as residential or commercial or industrial, not, you know, not business or mixed use as the statute says. So just wanted to maybe make a point of clarification in those zones, if that
And
makes sense.
So the statute does allow us to allow multifamily.
Sure, you could allow it
I
anywhere.
don't know what everybody else felt about that. Districts like this, where it is not allowed, or, I mean, the only benefit of allowing it is you get extra points towards your potential affordable housing moratorium, but again, Voluntown's not really, since you don't have sewers, you're not gonna get a lot, but would you want to open that door in your residential district?
It's, you know, yeah, I mean, you've always been able to allow multifamily in your residential district as much as you wanted, but that's a different question.
Okay. All right.
This is sort of about being forced. So, all
And-
right. So
And the
those
village
clarifications.
commercial overlays is
And then, so I, yeah, so I'm
the
just,
village district and the village commercial overlay are the two zones that are applied to.
that's what I would say.
Okay.
And then in the zoning schedule, at the bottom of page 10, 4.3,
Well,
adding SR for summary review. And so that's permitted, subject to summary review by the Planning and Zoning Commission or their designee. So just a definition thing. Okay, so then next on the village district regulation, section 5, page 11. Do two things at the top. First, we had minimum lot size for multiple family units. And so I'm basically just adding middle housing developments because that's essentially what we mean by multiple family units in the village district. And again, so fold that into 45,000 square feet. So just over an acre for one of these things. And that's legit. And why did this one get crossed out? Oh, 1. Okay, yeah. And I got rid of the reference to little 1 below, because little 1 below, you'll recall, we had a couple of years ago, we had changed the zoning regulations to basically enable that multifamily conversion at the end of Church Street. But we placed a density cap on it for for an existing building renovation that would place a cap of 4 units per lot with 15,000 square foot minimum. That was basically, a custom regulation essentially for that property. This obviously must allow more than 4 units. So I've taken that out and we've just stuck with multi-family units and mobile housing developments on basically an acre. And then note 2 becomes note 1. That would allow a reduction of minimum lot size. So just, again, these are meant to satisfy compliance with the statute. And then yeah, sorry.
Note
Sorry?
2 is where the applicant could demonstrate to the satisfaction of the commission, which shouldn't be in there, but that there will be no adverse impact to traffic circulation. That's the one that's gonna be the new lot, note 1.
Yeah, that was already there. It was note 2 previously.
That was for.
That was for minimum lot size for mixed use developments,
Hmm.
which we had at basically 2 acres. And this, you'd had a clause in there to allow for a reduction if it made sense. Which, is a little bit variancy, but we don't have to deal with that right now.
Right, and then the table of uses, mixed use development is still listed as a special permit. Is that problematic?
I don't think so. Because again, middle mixed use
middle
doesn't
house.
necessarily mean residential. And middle housing can include mixed use.
Right, but how do we know? Okay, so
So
I don't know what the difference would be.
So, if you had a mixed use development that had, say, one single family unit and a brew pub, or had a hair salon and a light manufacturing and an office building or an office suite, something like that. That is more than just, a single thing. An eating and drinking establishment and a amusement game arcade. That's mixed use also.
Well, I think then we should probably call it out mixed use, commercial, or commercial industrial, and then mixed use residential, commercial, greater than 9 units. That's how we're doing it in the other towns. So you have middle housing, which is mixed use, could be mixed use up to 9 units,
Yeah.
or is there a limit on the mixed use number under middle housing?
Well, middle house, there is. The unit cap would be 9.
Right, so this should be mixed use greater than 9 units. If it's commercial residential, it's greater than 9. By special permit. Unless we don't care.
Like something like this. So
Right.
mixed use development, including housing, including,
Mixed use development, commercial residential, greater than 9 units, or mixed use development, commercial, industrial,
Yeah, I don't,
it will be
well,
special permit.
yeah,
I'll show you how we're writing it.
yeah, I think that might be overthinking it a little bit, but I don't object to it. I just don't think it's necessarily critical there, because I think, again, give me an example that of a development that we would have some doubt as to how we would regulate it.
Greater than 9 units.
Okay, so like 12 apartments and a retail space.
Right.
That's mixed use, special permit? What is there any other way to define that?
Well. I think you should clarify.
Okay, I'm just saying, I don't know that there is any lack of clarity.
Well, because then you're gonna have because mixed use could be 1 unit,
Okay,
and then you've got the 2 to 9.
Mhm.
Uh,
which is middle housing, which we define.
Right, so if 2 to 9 units was by site plan, wouldn't 1 unit be by site plan?
If it's just a single residential unit,
Yeah, because that's not
Then
middle
that's-
housing.
then that's just single family dwelling.
I know, with a commercial, so, but
Then that's mixed
detached.
use. So then that's mixed use.
But why would we do that special permit if
Well, that's a
Design.
different, that's an entirely different question, Juliet. That's how you regulate something that's not what we're required to regulate right now. That's like saying, well, shouldn't we,
Alright.
shouldn't we make amusement game arcades as of right? Well, yeah, sure, but that's a different question.
Not really. I'll write it, I'll show it to you.
Okay.
So just to clarify, this only affects our village district. This is not affecting anywhere else.
Correct.
Should we really be looking at our map and defying our map of the village district? Because then it's gonna be governed by our septic systems and our well.
It already is.
I know that it is, but I mean, can we take the larger pieces out? They're never gonna get 9 units. They're never gonna get what the state wants.
It could be 2 units though.
Well, that's
Okay,
fine, but if we take out the larger pieces out of the equation, what are we worrying on?
Somebody could buy up 5.
Or someone could,
Someone.
if you had a larger lot, someone could develop a small on-site package wastewater system. It's just a matter of money.
You don't really have to worry about it, so we can just
I-
put the basic regulations in and be done and comply with the state and move on. Because the one other thing you haven't shown us is like what is it called, the traffic mitigation district.
Yeah, we can
No, I
talk about that if we want. Okay, so so I added that middle housing per section 10.8.t, and so that's where we're gonna put the meat of the specific regulations for that, and we'll get to that in a second. So then in the village commercial section, this is page 13. I basically did the exact same thing. I added a use number 12, which is middle housing per section 10.8t by summary review. And left out the rest of that. And now I'm going to page 22. This is section 8, dealing with site plan standards. Site plan standards. So proposing to add a new section that describes how summary review works. Again, this is a process intended specifically for the mixed use developments in commercial or mixed use districts. It applies to those that have the SR in the use tables that we just showed. You have to submit a site plan and supporting materials as detailed in section 9.2. So basically we have, as Juliet noted, a bunch of regulations, parking, loading, lighting, landscaping, you know, building massing, height, things like that, are all in section 9.2. And then to make sure that this is truly a summary review and not a special permit process, not a public hearing process, that we're detailing our regulatory timeframes or pegging that to the existing statutory time clock.
All right, is there, any you keep saying in here, determined by the commission or their designee, or maybe conducted as an administrative permit or site plan, is there any, would middle housing or mixed use ever be just a zoning permit? Is it
That's up to you.
duplex?
That's up to you. If you
Okay.
want to allow a duplex by as of right, that's fine. But that's your call.
Do we right now?
Duplex, we allow accessory apartments, which is a second dwelling unit.
No, duplex.
Wait, no, I'm sorry. I do. Maybe we do. Hold on. Two family. In, yeah, we do. We do allow two family dwellings.
By zoning permit?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll keep that, okay. That's fine.
Okay. All right. So where are we? That was section 8.
Four.
All right, and then we're in section 9.3, which is parking and loading. This is on page 25. This is a bunch of language on the new parking statutes. So this is again residential developments or mixed-use developments containing residential units. Again, and so these are basically over 16, under 16. Prohibition for lack of a specific parking count. Again, the way that the statute was written is you can, in theory, require off-street parking. But if an applicant comes in with a development of 16 units or under and does not have sufficient parking per our regulations, and that's the only shortcoming of that proposal, you are not allowed to deny it solely on the basis of a lack of off-street parking. And that's again 16 or under. And so that's what this section says, 4A.
So the 9 to 2, we can't regulate.
2 to 9, you can't.
Yeah.
I mean,
unless it's in a yeah.
Idiotic.
But you know, and again, the case is like, I think you have to have some faith in the you know, the invisible hand of the market here, that it's highly unlikely that if someone, you know, puts in a fourplex in an area where there is no on-street parking and there is no off-street parking, and tries to rent those out, they're not going to be able to rent them out because everyone in Voluntown needs a car. And so, you know, any decent landlord will find parking for his tenants or her tenants.
Has to be in here, but this is meant for urban.
For cities, for transit areas, for, you know, places where you have a bus or a train or, you know, walkable to jobs. So that's section A. Section B refers to more than 16 units. And this is, again, capping your required off-street parking to 1 space per studio or 1 bedroom and 2 spaces for each unit with 2 or more, or a parking needs assessment, which is something that an applicant can propose to reduce their parking burden. And we just basically define what that is. And so, you know, a developer would have to come in and basically prove that they don't need this off-street parking. And if they make the case, then we have to go with their lower number. And again, you know, I think this is broadly, we're not going to see much of this, but this is sort of standard sort of statutory language. Anybody have questions on that? Okay. And all right, for buffer area, this is landscape requirements, section 9.5, page 27. I'm just adding in C2, Buffer may be required where a lot with non-residential or multiple family more than 2 units other than a middle housing development, because again, a middle housing development can't, this buffer area thing is discretionary. Like we can require a buffer under certain circumstances. In the case of a middle housing where it's summary review, we have to, we can't have that bit of discretion. It's either in or out. So
You can require a buffer though.
you can, but it needs to be specific.
Right, so this whole number 2 shouldn't be in here anyway, because you can't have this whole, if commission finds by majority vote, that's gotta go. What is
Yeah.
that? That's like a waiver,
Right. Well, so I mean, I'm okay with getting rid of the whole thing. Or we could say require, yeah, multiple family. Yeah. So that's actually fine. We can get rid of that whole thing.
That would be my vote. I mean, if multifamily normally has to have a buffer, then it has to have a buffer.
No, I'm fine with that.
I don't know about 50 feet, but. that's a little-
Well,
I mean, in those particular zones,
yeah, no, in the village zone, I don't know how you get 50 feet on either side. You
You
just
would never.
wouldn't.
well,
And I mean, that, and in that section, that buffer section, which would be the new, it's with 3A, with buffer width, we say where lot size and shape of structures make it infeasible to comply, the commission may by a majority vote reduce this requirement. So that,
but you can't do that. You can't do majority vote, reduce anything. It can't be a variance.
Mhm.
In my strong opinion.
well, so I mean, and all of these, except, the thing is, if it's a special permit, I think you can, Juliet. And this is,
A special.
This is-
permit, maybe, yeah.
right, no, so except for this, like, until today, the only thing that would apply to this buffer standard was special permit uses, right? And so
Okay.
we're now in the position of having to consider a site plan use, a summary review use. So this was fine except for, and I mean, we could say that where size and lot shape,
All right,
the
no, just leave
buffer
it how it
area
is
shall-
then.
What's
Just leave it how it is. Just leave that other than a middle housing development and then that eliminates that. If this is only applicable to special permit things anyway.
right, so where would you put that?
Just leave it how you have it.
Wait, leave what?
Your changes the way they are.
Oh, okay. So where we had this here,
Yeah,
it may be required.
just whatever.
Okay, all right.
I mean, it doesn't apply if you don't. have it.
Right. And then, and then we basically got to the 10.8, the meat of the regulations. So in 10.8, we have, I changed the title of 10.8 to multiple family dwelling units and middle housing developments. And then reference again, the section 10.8T. So skipping through the regulations for multifamily because we're regulating middle housing slightly different. And this is where, and so we're on new T, bottom of page 38. I started writing some of these and then kind of stopped because I wanted to get a sense of how high a bar we wanted to have for this in terms of design and regulations. So I started with some basics, which is, setbacks, front yard 25, side and rear 15, distance between multiple structures 15 feet, minimum height 2.5 stories 35 feet, and impervious 50%. Then it's sort of up in the air. Do we want to, and this is why I gave you guys some examples of what some other towns are doing in terms of lighting, landscaping, facades, fenestration, roof slope, any of that stuff. We don't really have much of that in the rest of our regs. So, the question is how much more do we want to say here?
Do you want any buffering, like 5 feet or, anything like that? Something I could think of that might be,
There should be.
I mean, maximum height 2.5 stories, that'll limit a lot of multi-family anyway. Impervious surface is 50. I mean, the only other thing you have lighting standards already. I mean, 50 feet of buffering would be ridiculous, but 5 feet, one arborvitae, I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts?
Well, educate me again. He's saying that this this section is what the pile of paperwork that other people are inserting into that.
Yeah,
in their
some people
town?
are doing something as much as this.
So we're
people are doing
considering as little as 1, 2, and 3?
Only because you don't regulate, like regular multifamily, you don't do
Right.
this either.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
we're not controlling design, we're not controlling roof
Do you do a
shape, we're not
percentage?
controlling colors, we're not controlling building
Your
materials.
buffer, percentage of, the beauty, the rear yard, 15 feet. If you say 5 feet of buffer, then you're only left with a 10-foot backyard, so that's, you know what I mean? So, like, I would say 5 feet would be acceptable, I guess, even though you're only left with 10 feet, but you can't say 50 feet, there's only 15.
Right. And I mean, normally you would have, you might consider buffers between incompatible uses in a village district, you know. I mean, in typical villages, you do see mixed use in multifamily, and you could. So I don't know if it would be as much of an issue, in our particular district, but
Right, and again, and all of this stuff has to comply with public health, building and fire codes. So because of wells and septic systems and stuff like that, there are going to be natural separations in between buildings, and because of fire codes and things like that, there are going to be natural separations. It's just,
do we want a dedicated
Right.
landscaped buffer? Or Dave, do you have any care one way or the other? If it's-
Well, I'm good for leaving them bigger because variance is the action that the developer or applicant has at their disposal. They can go for variance.
No,
Because
you
each,
never go for a variant. Oh my God, no.
because every piece of property is a little different. You know, it's got the river going through it, next to it, wetlands, highway, whatever, you know.
Well, those regulations all still apply.
Right.
right, wetlands regulations still
I
apply. and-
change. What are you looking at making 5 feet on?
It's just, do you want like, if you had, I don't know, a 9-unit development next door to a single family house, would you want a row of trees in between? Something to buffer the two different uses. Some towns want like,
What?
Serious
My
buffer.
question was, you're talking about 5 feet. Where are you putting 5 feet?
oh, here, like a landscape buffer of 5 feet.
We only said
Just,
5.
do you want,
Fine.
right, do you want to require planting along the,
already
along
done.
the side yard line or the rear yard line?
Why
just a
are you
line
changing
of-
5 feet,
These are your building setbacks,
yeah?
so you can't put a building there.
And I only said
But it
5
could
feet
be,
because it's only 15 feet here, so I said, if you have 15 feet and you want a buffer, 5 feet's gonna leave you with a 10.
I mean, a landscape buffer, like something in it, rather, it could just be grass.
Well, that's what I was
No
gonna say.
building.
I'm almost wondering if we do say like, so that we don't get that whole front yard of 25 feet of setback, all, it says impervious. Stone is not, like, if they make an old driveway in stone.
Mm.
And then somebody along the line decides to pave it and there's like no grass area.
Well, they're capped at the 50%.
Well, I
Right,
understand
50%
that.
impervious.
That
And,
doesn't mean
and there's
that
an,
somebody along the way isn't gonna say, oh, we gotta pave this, you know what I mean? And there,
Did we not just do something similar to that? Again, I'm looking for education with Two Brothers property. And we told the guy, you could do this, but you have to plant the lawn or put a driveway in there.
they were supposed to plant a lawn out front, and that's never happened.
Yeah,
Was that
so
their
this is
condition?
the kind of thing you're talking about though, is
You can avoid them.
restricting what can and can't be done to that area.
Even with the Well, the saloon, they have what, between the two properties, it's what, 10 feet? Like enough to maybe fit a truck back there, and he's supposed to plant stuff there too, that's his buffer.
Right.
So, but he's not gonna be going around there, it's just gonna be blocked off, but. I don't think that we required that, did we? I think he just, the developer.
I think we
so.
offered it.
Yeah, but I think, I agree with it, I think there should be.
Well, then we could say a minimum 5 foot
Yeah.
landscape buffer.
Yeah. I would
So,
definitely,
and again, so just to remind you, then we're requiring, this is a minimum of an acre, 45,000 square feet. So even if you pave everything you can, you pave basically, put a building and pavement on 20,000 square feet, you still have 20,000 square feet of space that's undeveloped, green, and pervious. So
Right, what they're saying is that pervious could just be all gravel and ugly. So
Could
if
be,
you
okay.
require a minimum 5 foot
Okay.
landscape buffer, then you've got some plants there or something.
okay, that's fine. So we're gonna put it that way. So
Fine,
Right,
landscape.
exactly.
Yeah.
Do
trees
it,
of 10 feet or higher or something like that.
I
Yeah,
can,
like something.
put in bonsai that
Exactly.
are only 6
Yeah.
inches tall, and that's a
Right.
landscape buffer.
well, so do we want to say of plants
Totally.
a minimum of 3 feet high or something like that?
yeah, there's regulations out there for landscape buffers. I can find one.
And would a fence comply instead of,
Sometimes a lot of that.
right?
Do we want a lot of that though? I mean, I would say no,
I would
but
say definitely not, it's a fence.
they could put up a fence if they wanted to.
I mean,
but-
between the saloon and,
Yeah.
the post office, a fence would work.
But you would be comfortable with just the fence?
Well, it gives you the option.
That's-
like
that's
these
fine.
plans.
As an option. I mean, you shouldn't,
Well, they're using that, they are using that split rail fence as part of,
right,
was part of their curbing for their.
right. And a split rail you can see through, which doesn't work. That's not really a buffer. So it
So-
needs to be well defined.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
language
kind
that
of-
says that creates a visual
Yeah.
barrier between or something like
Cause I
that.
didn't like the
Right.
fact they were just gonna put curb stops along there.
Right.
I think,
So I'm sorry, are you okay with the fence?
Yeah, let me find, I think,
I think David's just saying we really need to define.
We
what
need to
that
nail
is.
it down.
Yeah,
well, we want a visual barrier or just, curb appeal? Which are we going for? Cause that's written differently.
Sound, light, I mean,
So the barrier.
Yeah,
a barrier type,
Alright,
as ugly as it may be, but
so we
I'll-
could say,
if I live next door and somebody developed next door and they're screaming and yelling and their lights on all night, I would be absolutely out.
125 foot trees right here.
Yeah,
well,
I would want something to dampen the noise and light and everything else.
so you
so
would say
something,
to create an effective year-round barrier. and that-
Year round,
That's
the
the
key,
that,
yeah.
you know which language we're
So
talking
not
about. John.
deciduous.
Yeah.
Material needs to be evergreen if it's evergreen.
Ledyard and East Hamptons are written that way, I think. You want, I can look too.
yeah, so something,
There's a lot of towns that write it that way, so.
so we can refine that, but I just want to make sure I get the philosophical underpinnings of what you're saying. So I'm writing here, a minimum landscape buffer of evergreen plantings 5 feet in width shall be established along side and rear property lines, or an opaque fence of a minimum of 4 feet in height to create year-round visual buffers between properties.
Yeah, the plantings could also create a year-round buffer as well.
Right, that's what I mean.
The
That's- that's
Evergreens
what-
are equivalent to create a
So you're gonna be
year-round,
looking over it.
Oh, yeah,
an effective year-round buffer,
Two-story though.
Yeah,
I know.
but you wouldn't
There's
want
no
to fence
great-
that high, I don't know.
Trees.
Trees will
Well,
grow.
2.5,
Trees will, yeah.
2.5, 35 feet.
Usually take 5 feet at the time of planting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright,
so we can refine that language, but this is the point you're trying to make, right?
Yeah.
do we want any other standards? Anything else you can think of? can't think of any. I mean, you have lighting, I assume.
We already
you already
have,
have that.
The lighting is in the lighting standards.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, I'm just thinking of the potential parcels when it's not like.
no, there isn't.
All right,
So,
yeah, right.
that's it. So at this point, I mean, we have, basically, I mean, we can do some wordsmithing in the landscape stuff, but at this point, Juliet, I would say if you wanted to proceed and basically accept this as an application and schedule a hearing for June, we could probably do that.
Yeah, just fix that landscape, we'll fix that language.
Yeah.
I'm gonna still peek at
So
that.
we can, I think, I mean, so we've got that. We can refine that at the at the hearing.
Okay,
But I think so what you have on screen and what you've got in the packet is basically your proposed reg.
all right, and what about the traffic mitigation district? We were just gonna, I didn't do the math and figure out what 4% of our total square acreage.
Yeah, I didn't do that math yet. If that's something that we could
I
establish
don't
if we
start
wanted.
putting state land in there where, yeah,
Well, that counts.
I know, I'm just,
Um. But I mean, logically, our traffic mitigation district would be
The village, right?
the village, because you wouldn't.
So
Offsite.
let me actually here, I'll do let me pull up the
Do we have to designate those by July 1st?
no, not necessarily. And we could, and I mean, in this case, we could just add a line, and I can do some quick math on the village. But we could just add a line in there that, for purposes of, Public Act 25-1 traffic mitigation district, the village zone shall be considered the town's traffic mitigation district. And we don't have to do any other mapping or analysis of it.
Because this can't happen in any of the residential.
I was gonna ask that with all these, the hand-me-down from the state edicts. None of that applies outside of the two districts we were just looking at.
Not this particular housing bill does not. You can opt to allow it out there, but
But it doesn't
Yeah,
say
it's just
you
for
must
commercial
do
district.
that.
I mean,
So-
830G still applies and that can go anywhere, but we
Yeah.
can't have a traffic mitigation district for 832, so. It is.
where is
So-
this next bill?
No, that other one didn't fly. That one that was like 5,000 square foot minimum lot sizes, if you had water and sewer, that.
Oh yeah, no, that didn't pass.
Thank God. That
Yeah, that was kind of a mess.
ridiculous.
So I'm just doing a quick, I don't know if you can see,
4% of your total.
if you see on the screen, yeah, so I'm just gonna do some quick heads up GIS math to see how big our village district is relative to the town. I'm sure it's less than 4%. So this is 0.4 square miles or 0.39 square miles. All right, so let me delete that. And then let me zoom out. Anybody happen to know offhand how big Voluntown is in terms of square miles? Why is that clear? Clear. Okay.
Square miles in Voluntown.
Are you using Siri?
Mhm.
One.
Let's see who's faster.
I think
All right, I measure
9.8,
I measure 39.
mile.
yeah,
With about 38.9 square miles of land. And
Yeah.
0.9 square miles of water.
39.8 square miles.
Okay. Yeah, I had about 39.2. So, okay.
So that's
So
fine.
we could, I would say, Juliet, I mean, clearly the village district is far, far less than 4%.
And what about the village overlay district? Is that even, that, I don't know why that says overlay, because it's landed.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why this is.
All the village district. the village commercial overlay district.
Yeah.
Is on the map, though.
It's on the map. Yeah,
I
it's been,
assume
landed. It's been landed.
So you can include that too.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. And I'll go, this is gross.
Again, in a town like this, there's no-
Are we trying to get area that
So that's,
is mostly traveled? Is that what we're?
that's
trying
still
to
less
get?
than, that's still less than a square mile. That's 0.885 square miles.
It's where. So if you have a unit. Under 16. No.
Under,
Oh,
yes, under.
um, If
So
you
we
get
can-
into this area that you have to provide on-site parking in these areas, because these areas, you're saying the streets are narrow, or there's not a lot of good off-site
Right.
parking, you know.
That,
you-
yeah,
you
that these,
identify all those areas in your town, if they're in a commercial district.
right.
like,
So if you think of,
Florida-
if you think of downtown Mystic, where you've got, a very dense building against building, even an 8-unit multifamily in downtown Mystic would stress available parking, right? So, so the question is, do we want to designate our village district and our village district overlay as these traffic mitigation districts? And that's fine. That's an easy do. Okay.
Yep.
So I'll add, Juliet, I'll add just some language in here stating that for purposes of parking and traffic mitigation, I'll add it in the parking section. And then maybe maybe a note also in each of the village and overlay zones, for purposes of Public Act 25-1, this is considered a traffic mitigation district.
Yeah.
I'll add that.
Yeah.
So I would say if you guys are relatively comfortable with that, you can have a motion to receive this as a zoning amendment application and have a public hearing at the June meeting.
Right. These are crazy. We've modernized the drawings down of all the.
So
old
yeah,
ones.
that was overkill, but I wanted to show you what some other towns are working on.
What town is this?
That's a template that we developed, and I think we're using that in
Wow.
Newington, East Windsor, Vernon. There's a few.
Okay, you might, there's some good landscape language though.
Yeah, there is some good stuff in there.
Additional screening may be provided through the use of vinyl or wood fencing, not to exceed 6 feet.
And a couple of those sets of regulations, we basically established a fairly high bar, and then if developers didn't want to take that approach, then they could basically flip their summary review into a special permit, and kind of negotiate. So summary review is essentially as of right, but it's a fairly high bar. If you want to lower the bar, well, then it's a special permit.
John, can we send these changes
Mhm.
to the town attorney just
Yeah.
to verify everything's legit?
You have budget to do that.
Sure we do.
We haven't spent much of Rich's money.
Their
Yeah.
budget, the selectmen's budget covers attorney
And
Does it?
we have attorney fees in our,
in our budget.
In
my
our
personal
budget.
I know, I thought we bumped them up. actually.
Yeah, no, we bumped it down. We haven't, this is, yeah,
We
this
have
won't be
always-
much.
I didn't know if it's separate,
It's
sometimes
always
the
been
selectmen
sent.
does it.
always been sent the attorney.
So, well, so again, I'll wait for a motion, but we'll send this to the attorney. We'll put it in the paper. We'll send it to the COG.
What do you want a motion for?
To schedule for a public hearing.
But we haven't,
He wants to schedule a public hearing.
I know, so you don't have actual applications with numbers that we accept and
Well,
schedule?
we can you know, we can add one, you can call it an application if you want, give it a number.
So I'll entertain a motion to accept, an application to revise the zoning regulations to be in conformance with 25-1 and to set a public hearing for June, what's the date?
Sorry, the third, oh no, what is it? We're at the second Tuesday, or second Wednesday of June is June 10th.
For June 10th at 7:30 PM in the town hall.
Upon approval from the attorney.
What I can do.
His comments can be incorporated into
Okay.
whatever, yeah.
You wanna make that one? People don't usually, somebody could just say so moved and somebody could second.
So moved. Obviously.
Mhm.
So now somebody's got a second.
You want a second?
I don't want to second it, no.
You don't want to send this to public hearing? All right, let's talk about it. Why do people want to send it to public hearing? We have to adopt it anyway.
Okay, do we have to do it in June?
No,
I'm asking you, I'd love to see the final draft. Because he's gonna change the wording on the,
that's fine.
But just understand that since it's our application,
yeah,
we can alter that at the public hearing if something about that language for the landscaping, that's the only one we're changing. We can play with that
right.
based on comment.
15 days.
I know, but do we really want to? A lot of times commissions don't meet in July, when people are away. Get it done. I mean, it's not complicated. This one's pretty easy for the town.
I will second that one.
All those in favor? Aye.
I second.
Right.
All right, so June, whatever we said.
June 10th, yep.
Okay.
All right, Crystal, I'll reach out, are you in the office tomorrow morning?
Yep.
Okay, we'll talk tomorrow morning about posting it.
Be a model town to get it done. All right, that's all on that. The approval of the minutes, did everybody look at the April 8th minutes? I had made one suggested correction. You have to separate one section out. You got that?
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was. Two sections were blurred together that should have been separated. I don't remember where it was. So it's. So it hasn't been pulled out yet.
You want me to pull it? I think we need to unpull it. So I took the bullet plan on it.
Well, we had new business, the section 824 referral, and then somewhere in there it switched over. So after that motion.
Yeah.
Okay, and then where it says zoning changes,
Yeah,
that's. Sort of, that would be little b.
okay, make it, okay, I can correct that, send it to you tomorrow.
It's a separate thing.
Gotcha, okay, sorry about that.
And then do we do any, is there three? Maybe the, where it says commission reviewed the budget, I guess that would be C.
Okay,
Yeah, C, because we made a motion. I
Yeah.
think it has to make a motion.
yes,
Right. Well, entertain a motion to accept the minutes with those two changes, separating out the zoning changes on 25-1 as little b and the budget discussion as. C.
You need a second.
Somebody say so moved.
So moved.
And then a second.
Second.
Like Jim. All those in favor?
Aye.
No comments, no old business. We're no additions to the agenda, there's no new business, any correspondence,
No correspondence.
staff report?
Busy, a lot of grant activity. Well, first in zoning enforcement, I did issue that notice of violation last month for the trailer on Congdon Road. That's going to be in association with a house. And so I've given them 30 days to pull the building permit for the building and zoning permit for the house. And which is, we allow that during the construction phase. So we just need to actually get the building permit pulled. So that's in progress. As I said, there's been a lot of grant activity. The first part of the water study is hopefully going to be complete in the next couple of weeks. The first part being the village water system component. So we're hoping for a preliminary report on that, I think next week. And then we'll ideally schedule some public information meetings for the summer, for June or July, just to talk about that potential design and what it might cost if we want to proceed. We're still hassling with doing some well testing out on Beach Pond. And so that portion of the study will probably not happen until the fall. We're working with some pavement contractors to give us a price on the reclamation and repaving of Congdon Road. I'm waiting for some bids. We decided to go through a process using a vendor in place. We don't really need to do any complicated engineering on that. So we're just going to go with essentially a design build with a paving contractor. The sidewalk project through the village and then out to Town Grill is at DOT for final review. We changed some of the engineering of the abutments on the pedestrian bridge. So that had some redesign, and so it's back at DOT. I'm hoping to get final encroachment approval within the next month, and then ideally we can go out to bid late spring, early summer, and hopefully, maybe see some construction this fall. We'll see. I'm not super optimistic on that because the project is really, really dragged. And then the last grant we are going to be working on is a planning grant for the conversion of that red storage shed on the other side of the parking lot, between the parking lot and the playscape, into a recreation and senior center offices, a community meeting space, public bathrooms, and some storage. And so we're gonna hopefully get a grant to do architecture and engineering designs on that.
Which
So
grant?
community investment fund. So Volantown is eligible. East Hampton is not. Yeah. So we're gonna take a shot at that one.
Just out of curiosity, is that a 50/50 grant or is that a,
No, that's the planning grant is no, there's no town match.
okay,
Sort of like the water study we're doing, which is another community investment fund planning grant. It's all state money.
gotcha.
Although I will say, our Parks and Rec chair, Mark Simmons, did manage to get a $100,000 foundation grant to assist with the implementation of the recreation complex implementation. So we do actually have some local match. So good on Mark for tapping into some of his foundation connections.
That house that has a trailer on it, they have to submit a zoning permit too, right?
Yes. Sorry, I thought I said zoning and building.
What happened with the saloon or the multifamily?
As far as I know, it's just probably cash flow problems.
I haven't seen any activity, right?
Yeah, there was rumors that dude Patrick St. Jean was dead. It'd been so long since anyone had heard from him, but yeah, I think it's just cash flow problems.
Just wondering. Does anybody have anything else? Motion up?
844.
I'll second that. All in favor?
All right.